check. Oh, we're on, eh? Okay. Just tell me when you want us to go live. We're on. We're on live now. Well, I want to welcome those of you that are here in person. We do have a number of friends joining us online as well. So thank you for taking the time to actually physically get here. And for those of you online, welcome. And just a few introductory remarks before we jump into this. My intent is to talk for 75 minutes, an hour and a quarter. I'll be moving quite quickly because we have a lot of material to cover, but I do want to honor your time. And then we'll dedicate about 15 minutes for general Q&A. So perhaps Mark or whoever's monitoring the online, if there are questions that come through that way, I'd be happy to answer those as well. And then if you want to talk, the questions for the 15-minute period, if they can be of a general nature, something that's applicable to what you think most people would want to know, I'd be happy to talk to people afterwards regarding their particular situation. So I want you to relax. It may seem like there's a flood coming at you. The goal here is for you to simply grab a hold of concepts. So don't get bogged down with all the numbers and so forth. And also, this is obviously a very Prairie-branded workshop. Where you see the word Prairie, you can easily insert charity. So we can chat about that later. So I'd like to start off with something fairly light. This is a heavy subject. Most people don't like it. I'm kind of a weirdo. I enjoy it. But I love this cartoon here. It says, "Dear Revenue Canada, I'm writing to you to cancel my subscription. Please remove my name from your mailing list." Now, wouldn't that be nice? Canada has some of the greatest tax incentives in the world. And it behooves us to take advantage of that so that we can leave a legacy that endures. So I want to explore with you ways that you can minimize Canada Revenue's impact on your estate and maximize your particular situation. So let's move on to the next subject, which is why plan? Well, a 2018 Angus Reid poll uncovered that 65% of Canadians, so let's just say 1 in 3, or 2 in 3 rather, have no will or one that didn't accurately reflect their wishes. So for discussion's sake, we're talking about 1 in 3 in this room actually have something that reflects what they want to have happen on their passing. And I'm not just talking about your will. We're going to be talking about your estate, which includes your will. So why plan? Well, first up, I want to chat about the cost of indecision. And I'm going to introduce this by way of story. I met a man about 25 years ago who his estate was about 1.5 million, and he wanted to give $500,000 to one daughter, $500,000 to another daughter, the other $500,000 to charity. But he was adamant he didn't want his estate to go to Ottawa, taxes that is. We gave him all the goods that he needed to make a decision, but he refused to make a decision, and he died unexpectedly. So the cost of his decision, his indecision rather, it actually cost his estate around $110,000, and the ministries, the charities that he wanted to support didn't benefit from that. Why? Simply because he didn't act. He didn't choose. There's a high cost to indecision. Why plan? There's the whole concept of the confusion that surrounds poor planning. I know of a situation where the husband and the wife made wills separately and used their own words, and it caused such confusion within the Alberta court system that the judge at first rejected probate of the respective wills, and then, don't ask me how, magically, sometime later and many thousands of dollars later, reversed that decision. So you need to be very clear as to what your intent is. You can't just write something on a piece of, you can technically, but it's going to be interpreted by legalese. And so make sure that you have poor planning. Another situation I came across a few years ago was an alumna who, I won't get into the big story, but she developed this pay-by installment plan for her nephew to purchase her property. What she didn't calculate into this, and what her accountant didn't calculate into this, was what her capital gains would be, which I calculated to be around $76,000, of which she didn't have any of that in her estate. So when she passes, it's going to be one royal mess. And it will involve a lot of money as well. So there's a lot of confusion, and confusion costs money as well. Welcome, and there's a folder there for you if you're wanting to. Oh, that's Mitch. Hi, Mitch. And then there's the pain of not having a plan. And I don't know how many times I've heard this in one-on-one situations with people. My kids would never. Just please don't believe that. Your kids will, or there's a very likelihood that your kids will. As much as we don't like to think about it, if we're dealing with large estates, somehow ethics kind of fly out the window, and there are, I hate to say it, but there are estate predators. People who see that, and if they can see an angle, they will try to work it so that they can get what they think is their share. And I'm actually working right now in a situation, right in the middle of a situation, where there's a couple estate predators literally preying on an estate. And we're dealing with the respective lawyers on the situation. I'm just telling you that families that seem to get along when it comes to estates are not quite so nice. I'll tell you another story. I got this call, I'm guessing this is about 15 years ago, where some young lady, young meaning in their 20s, 30s, somewhere in there, called me and said, "Are you the lawyer that did my dad's paperwork?" Well, first of all, I'm not a lawyer. But Dad has just had a heart attack, massive heart attack. He's not expected to live. And the family is already squabbling. Now, it was a blended family, so that even compounds the situation. The interesting thing is, the funny thing is, through the miracle of the wonder of Alberta Health, he recovered and is functioning quite fine today. Now, this happened about 15 years ago, but he has to live now with the knowledge that his family was fighting over his stuff, and he wasn't even gone yet. So, all right, next is you can enjoy benefits now, today, on your estate, as well as on your passing. There are ways to leverage your assets, depending on some variables, but nonetheless, leverage your assets to actually enjoy a benefit now, and as well as on your passing. So the story that comes to mind is a gentleman who attended Prairie back in the 30s. I used to visit him quite a bit in Ontario, and he was a blue-collar guy and whatnot, and he began to invest in gift annuities, and I'm going to talk about that. And over the years, he would just reinvest. And even though he was a blue-collar kind of a guy, I didn't think he could bless what a charity that was important to him. He told me near the end of his life, he says, I never believed that I could bless, in this case, prairie, or let's just insert the word charity, to the extent that he could through this technique, this mechanism, which I'll introduce a little later. I want you to be able to harness the power of estate planning to accomplish whatever your goals are. I hope that you actually have goals for your estate. And we can talk about that in a bit as well. Depending on your assets, you can use different tools to accomplish key goals, such as reducing or even eliminating tax, making asset transfer to heirs more smooth, protect your estate from estate predators. I've already talked about that. And give and receive in ways that you may not yet realize. And then just be a wise steward. We're all called to be stewards, managers of something that actually we only hold temporarily. This is God's, and he wants us to be a good manager. The story I told you earlier, this gentleman out in Vancouver area, he wanted to be a good steward, but he didn't act. And hence, his great intentions were not realized. So it's not enough to want something. You actually have to make choices. And so I'm hoping that this workshop will help you get there, to make whatever choices that you need to make. Now, let's go to a poll. I'm going to ask the people here, I'm going to just test your Bible knowledge for a little bit. Which subject does the Bible reference the most? So here's how we're going to operate. I'll just say the word, you put up your hand. So which subject does the Bible reference most? Those think that it is love. Put up your hand. Okay, heaven. Hell. Money. You know, we have such a smart audience. I should just sit down right now, because that's the answer. A Christian financial expert, Howard Dayton, said that the Bible references money and possessions 2,350 times. I'm not taking credit for this. This is another person. It's more than Jesus talked about love, and it's more than he talked about heaven and hell put together. So if Jesus talked about this, you would kind of get the idea that this is a priority subject, something that we need to pay attention to. And if we need to pay attention to it, then what guides us? Now, as believers, I would like to think that we all go to the scriptures as our basis for making decisions. I want to talk a little bit about James 4:14. It says, you don't know what will happen tomorrow. Life is a mist. And on that vein, I was thinking of a couple that attended a workshop of mine in March. And both of them were 71 years old. And 6 weeks after the workshop, the wife very unexpectedly passed away at what I consider a very young age, 71. So the scriptures should be, our baseline for decision making. So I'm just going to whip through this. It's not going to be a discourse on theology. But the Bible talks in Proverbs 13:22 about leaving an inheritance to your family. So it's smart, it's wise to leave an inheritance to your family. If you go to 2 Corinthians 9:6, you'll read there about the principle of sowing and reaping. Now, I've lived in Three Hills for 46 years, and I've traveled, I don't know how many 100,000 kilometers, and seen I don't know how many million farm fields. I have yet to see a farmer do one loop around his field and call it good for the summer. Because in the fall, that farmer knows that they're only going to harvest what they sow. So that principle is a very significant principle, the principle of reaping and sowing. Now, of course, it involves more than money, but it includes money, how you live your lives. But we're not going to talk about that. This next one should be very familiar to us. I just already referred to it. We live with a very uncertain future. Who could have guessed 18 months ago that you folks would be wearing masks? It's certainly not your choice, right? We live in a very uncertain future. We do not know what's going to happen. And so we need to plan. This lady that attended my workshop back in March, thankfully, she and her husband already had their wills done. They did those wills 2 weeks before the workshop. So 8 weeks from creating will to passing. We just don't know how much time God is going to give us. Some will have a long time, some of us not so much. And then legacy. James chapter 4, the second part of the verse says, "You are a mist that appears for a while and then vanishes." In Matthew 6:20, "Lay up treasure in heaven." When I think of this word mist, God uses very simple, humble, ordinary folks to do his great, wonderful purposes. So I think in the context of Prairie, a gentleman like Fergus Kirk, a humble farmer who didn't think much of himself, but through him, God was able to do amazing things. But we are a mist. So I don't want you to think of yourselves as, this is just for a special category of people. This is for all of us. We can all leave a legacy of some sort. And I'm not just talking about money. All right, let's move on to what I call values. I just want to pose the question to you, and I think we're all on the same page here. What is really important to you? And you say, well, that's a really daft question. Well, let me put it this way. Most estates will make a charitable gift. It's either going to be a charitable gift to Ottawa, and we can now continue to say a charitable gift to Justin Trudeau, or, and I say ... a value that's important to you, a ministry of some sort that's important to you. You get the choice, actually. You probably don't believe that statement, but yes, taxation is a choice. It all depends on what decisions you make along the way. Remember our friend in Vancouver? He made a choice. Actually, his indecision was a decision. He could have paid zero tax, but he wound up not doing that. So taxation is a choice. So I'm going to ask you the question from a values point of view. What is most important to you? This is a duh question. Obviously, family is important, and I would like to believe that your faith is important. Let's go the other way and say, what is least important? And I'm going to suggest, and I would like to think that you would agree, the agenda of government and or prevailing winds of culture that we find ourselves in today. So as you think about your choices, these are some of the things that you need to factor in as to what actually do you, at the end of your days, want to support. And I would like to think that you would pick family and faith versus the prevailing winds of society. So I'm going to move on to some practical benefits. I highlighted that in the promo, and you've got the brochure that highlights it. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Practical benefits of planning. First, monetary. There are ways where you can actually inject an income stream into your economics that you cannot outlive. There is a way to do that. Reduce tax and seamlessly transfer assets to heirs. There is a way. So there is a monetary benefit. How about It would help if I press the right button. Social good. What I mean by that is empowering causes, and those causes are kids in the kingdom. Empowering causes important to you. I call this relational capital. What I mean by that is preserving family unity at a time when it can be the most fragile. I was talking with a very opulently wealthy man 11 months ago, and he and his siblings, all of them except for one, are independently wealthy. They built their own, empires. And so they don't, money is not an issue in that greater family circle. But he was telling me how their father passed down assets to one of 6. And even though they're all independently wealthy, I could hear the edge, the sour edge in his tone, his voice. It didn't build good relational capital. And so when you make your plans, that's a key factor. And especially on the passing of somebody. I had a really positive experience with another lady about 5 years ago who wanted to give us a gift in kind. I'll talk about that. And she involved her children. I sat around the kitchen table to discuss ideas with her, and her children were part of the discussion, and the thing just worked out beautifully. So there you have two opposite stories. Practical benefit spiritually, I've talked about the principle of reaping and sowing. Stewardship, leveraging your assets to maximize benefit, minimize waste. When we come to the whole, what do I do with my RSP RIF thing, I'll show you a neat technique here. And then mental well-being. I don't know how many times other people have said, once they've got their affairs in order, and they just go, oh, phew, that's a weight off my mind. It's so nice to know that stuff is in place, and you can rest that things are well taken care of. All right, I just want to move on to give you a overarching illustration of the power of estate planning. So before I get to the charts I'm going to show you, I took an actual scenario that I was working with, and I have changed the numbers so to disguise the estate so none of you could possibly guess who the person might be. But the ratios are exactly the same. So in this particular estate, we have, if there was no estate planning and the gentleman in question, I'm just saying his estate was worth $2 million. Actually, it was worth a whole lot more than that. But ratioed out, he would owe taxes in the neighborhood of $160,000 there. So we were talking about various ways. What can I do? What can he do with that to leverage his estate, to accomplish his goals, and bless charity at the same time? And so we came up with a plan which would cost his estate, keeping in mind he's already going to pay $160, that's over here, and let me just get closer. Sorry, $160, and we created a plan that would only cost his estate an additional $130,000. However, the impact of that is that the cost to the estate was $230,000, but the benefit to charity was almost $500,000. Just different ways you can work your estate. And here is the interesting thing. The net result was, by doing this plan, the estate's worth $2 million. It would cost his estate $290,000. yet he would be giving to charity $460,000. Now, this is just an illustration for that particular situation. You have to understand that every estate, every situation is unique. There is no one size fits all for anything. Every situation is completely unique. So what I've described here, don't expect the same kind of result for you. I'm just illustrating the power of that. All right, so that's quite a bit for an introduction. What are the tools and how do they work? So I'm going to share different tools you can use to accomplish different goals depending on your need. Some by themselves, some work well in combination with another tool and whatnot. This cartoon kind of describes it well. Okay, your father managed to get a mouse. Now, how do we use it? Of course, the cartoon itself is quite dated, but it gets across the point. The tools are there, but you have to know how to use them, what to do, etc. So let's jump right now into different tools just to see how they work. So I'm going to start off with a very popular one. In fact, in my experience, this has been by a long shot the most popular tool. You can purchase a gift annuity at age 60, but it is much more advantageous to do this at age 70 on up. Why? Because the return rates that you get and the tax benefits you get really escalate at 60 plus. I got a very fresh reminder of how beneficial this tool is. Little personal story. In April, my dad, at 99, went to be with Jesus. And of course, I was his power of attorney, so I was doing all his finances and whatnot. But the short version is that his RIF had, as it was intended to, is almost expired, where it was only giving him $15. That's $15 a month. But he had purchased an annuity back in 2003, which gave him $550 per month for life. And so when he passed away, his RIF, $15, but the annuity had injected that income stream that people are looking for, particularly in their retiring years. So let's jump into, well, what is a gift annuity? I think of it this way. Income you can't outlive, and it's a 6-in-1 deal. So here we go. What is the action? You invest a large, which I'm calling 10,000 plus, deferred gift, providing lifetime income for the annuitant or the annuitants, depending on if it's a husband, wife, or just one person. Well, what is the benefit to the donor? First off, you get higher lifetime interest. Now, it varies with age. The rate increases as you get older. That's why 70 is a good starting point. And then as you get older, every year the rate, if you purchase, the rate goes up. Now, you'll see there I've got 6 equals 9%. What does that mean? What that means is because it's a gift annuity, there are tax incentives built into the annuity. So if I offer you a rate of 6%, that's actually equal to 9% on the open market, simply because of the outrageously good tax benefits that are built into a gift annuity. It's secure. It's a guaranteed contract for the duration of your life. It expires at the time of your passing or your partner's passing, depending on whether or not it's a single or a joint annuity. You get reduced or zero tax on the annuity income, so the money coming back to you, and this all again is determined by an algorithm. I'd have to do a specific quote, but the threshold for zero tax is around 77, 78, somewhere in there. But before that, it's a very minor percentage of the return that you get is tax-free. And then at the time you purchase an annuity, you'll get a minimum 20% immediate tax donation receipt. I just did a quote for a guy who wants to do a $200,000 gift annuity, and the tax donation receipt coming back to him because of his age and the type of annuity it is was $76,000. So there's a great advantage. You literally increase your income. You're not going to find 6% on the open market, let alone 9%, or you're going to be hard pressed to do that. And then it won't be it'll be taxable. This is tax-free. And what's the benefit for Prairie, or you could include a charity? We retain the principal on the passing of the annuitants. Now, Prairie is a unique organization in that we are probably one of 20 in all of Canada who are authorized by government to issue annuities. Now, if you wanted to do an annuity and name another charity as the beneficiary, I can tell you how to do that through another organization. But if your interest was for Prairie, I could help write up a contract for that. But it is possible to do an annuity. Depends on who you want the beneficiary to be, would determine whether you work with me or another organization. Just wanted to be open about that particular aspect of annuities. It has been, let me say this from a Prairie point of view, because I'm privy to that information, of course. This has blessed the school to the point of millions of dollars over the lifetime of us doing this. So people get the benefit of income, and then on their passing, we keep the residual principal. And I have to tell you that it has saved our bacon quite a bit. Literally millions of dollars over probably 50 years. All right, let's illustrate this. So you always have to make assumptions when you do illustrations. We want to assume a 77-year-old couple investing $25,000. And I'm just going to pick on my dad and say the remaining spouse passing at 99. Now, you might be thinking, and justly so, who dies at 99? Not too many. So I'm going to give you a more realistic illustration later on. I'm going to give you extremes on this. But before I do jump into the actual illustration, I do want to give you some extremes. I worked with a lady, I'm going to stab at 20 years ago, who I walked into her house just to visit her. She's in Ontario. This happened in 2005. And I walked into her. We had this friendly relationship. I said, so-and-so, what are you doing? Papers everywhere on her kitchen table. Oh, she says, I'm working on my will. Well, that's a good thing. So she had a sizable estate, single lady and whatnot, and here she is, she's plowing through all that. And she said to me, do you know what the lawyer wants to do up my will? And I'm bracing myself for a four-figure, $300. She was worth an awful lot more. So she thought $300 was an obscene amount of money to do a will. And for a person that had a multi-seven-figure estate, no, that's not even peanuts. That's the shell of the peanut. Well, she died. She did an annuity with me that day, and she died 6 weeks later. All right? On the other side of the equation, again, this is about 2005. I worked with a couple near Drum. They likewise purchased a number of annuities. And he passed away at 101. She passed away at 107. So you just never know. If you have that sort of longevity, you are going to need some sort of stable income, because this is the very last thing you want to be worrying about, if you're even capable of worrying about it, is how am I paying the bills? My dad would say to me, not often, but on occasion, I know it costs money to stay here. Who's paying for all this? Well, he didn't know that he was paying for it. I was just taking care of the bills. Okay, let's move on to the actual illustration. Enough of this. So, what we have here, with those assumptions, the annual income, if you can't read those numbers here, so 77-year-old couple, $25,000 for the duration of their lives, with the last partner passing at 99, they would receive an annual income of a little over $1,200, zero tax on any income that they would receive. Over the span of that lifetime, they would receive $27,000 back. There's also the tax credit that they would get at the beginning. So you have to add that as part of the combined income, which would be $29,000. So over the life of the annuity, they've invested 25, received 29 plus, and given, in this case, Prairie, or anyone really, a charity, a gift of $25,000. Pretty powerful tool. Lower your taxes, increase your income, and give all in one move. Let's just move to this. The power of a gift annuity to achieve the same net income on the open market. The rate in this particular case, the gift annuity rate right here, is 4.93%. To accomplish the same goal, less the gift, you would have to earn, for the same duration of time, 7.75% on the open market. And you wouldn't be giving a gift at the same time. You see how powerful these tools are, or this tool is? All right, I'm going to take another poll here. The question is it possible to avoid taxes on your RSP, your RIFs? Now, this is the number one question I get from people. We all love to put into our RSPs because it gives us a tax benefit as we chug along through life, and then all of a sudden at 71, we have to convert it to a RIF, and now we have to start withdrawing, and that's when Justin Trudeau wants to carve out his pound or 6 of flesh. Simple yes or no answer. So, is it possible to avoid taxes on your RSP, on your RIFs? Hands up for yes. Hands up for no. You don't know. I've stumped you. Good. It is not possible to avoid taxes on your RSPs or your RIFs. So the best we can do is move on to the next slide, and we can help soften the blow. That's the best way I know how to put it, because you can't avoid this. Is there a way to soften the blow? So, what would the action require to soften the blow? I've told you all about annuities. So the action would be you could convert your RSP or your RIF, preferably your RIF, into an annuity. The benefit for you, the donor, would be that the gift annuity value would be determined by the RIF less the mandatory withholding tax. So for instance, if you had an RSP right now and you said, I'm done with this thing, I want to convert it today into a gift annuity, you would be paying a withholding tax. And we can get into that in a little bit. However, there's another way, another benefit to you. The gift annuity value can be determined by the full value of the RIF if you withdraw the minimum. Now, why is that? At age 71, when you withdraw just the minimum of RIF required, there is no withholding tax. That's why it's really important, in my estimation anyway, to hold on and not redeem your RSPs or your RIF until age 71. And then only withdraw what you are required by law to withdraw, and then convert that. It will certainly provide tax relief and will produce lifetime income, as I described earlier, with greater value in Fort Prairie or the charity of your choice. They retain the principal on your passing. So let's get into what this actually looks like. Here we go. So if you were to just simply cash your RIF as it is, I forget what the assumptions were I made in this particular illustration, but if you were to cash the RIF, you would be paying $3,700 in tax, and you would be receiving out of it $8,500 plus in cash. That's just cash, take it home, put it in the bank. However, if you converted that into an annuity and you lived out your mortality, you would lower your tax to about $2,300, so 37 down to 25, sorry. And over the lifetime, assuming you lived your mortality, you would actually receive $10,500 in return versus $8,500, plus you'd be giving a gift to charity of $12,000 plus dollars. It's a really cool technique when you convert the minimum RIF. It's really leveraging well the asset that you have. So I was thinking about this one day, and I thought, anybody who has a RIF has to withdraw the minimum, right? You have no choice. The government has a prescribed formula that you have to withdraw. So I was just thinking to myself, what would this look like if at age 71, a person did this for 5 years, and that's totally random, just 5 years? What would that look like? So I looked at a particular state whose projections are, the projections for this particular state are that the RIF portfolio at 71 would be $507,000. So that's what I'm basing my model on here. Just to give you the illustration. And I'm not going to get to any of the detail. There's like yarns of detail here. But this is what it would look like. So convert minimum RIF annually for 5 years. What is the net result over the life of the annuity? The tax payable, if you just cash the RIF every year and keep it, the tax is let's just say $30,000 here. Conversely, if you convert it, it's in the $20,000 range. If you cash it again, the income that you would get is $68,000 versus lifetime income of $87,000. And then the gift to charity at the end is in the neighborhood of $98,000. So folks, I have to be transparent. I'm approaching retirement myself, and I'm doing a lot of thinking about what am I going to do. This is something that I intend to do myself. So I'm not trying to sell you a bill of goods that I wouldn't do myself. This is such a powerful technique to save tax, increase income, and bless charity all at the same time. Just an amazing tool. Okay, let's go to our last, forgetting this. In this particular scenario, the individual would have reduced their tax by 33% and increased their income by 28.5% and given a major gift to a charity. All right, let's go to poll number 3. So in general, when will people pay the most tax of their lifetime? I'm going to give you 4 options here. And you just put up your hand when you think. So, in general, when will people pay the most tax in their life? When the children leave home? No. During the highest earning years. Okay, we have a vote there. On the sale of a taxable property. Okay, have another customer over there. At the time of your passing. All right, the majority are right. You'll pay, or the estate is most likely to pay, the most tax at the time of your passing. Now, why is that? The government deems that when 1 second before you pass away, you have sold all of your assets. They just calculated the associated tax with that. It lands, they come up with a number, and whatever tax category that number is, that's the tax you pay. So you might be, on average, maybe you're in a 30% tax category, maybe. But if they took all of your assets, taxable assets, you could easily catapult into a 48% category at the time of your passing. So yes, most estates, in general, will pay the highest tax at the time of their passing. So that introduces the next subject, which is capital gains. And I actually like to think of this as capital pains. I've just told you that Canada Revenue will simply do the math on your passing, and depending on your assets, we'll just calculate that number, and that's the tax you pay. So you need to pay close attention to the type of assets you have and the associated taxation with that. Remember that the story I told you about the lady who was selling her estate by installments to her nephew, and she had neglected to calculate what the capital gains were. Why? Because she lived on 40 acres, and only 1.2 acres is considered part of your principal dwelling. The rest, if you live on an acreage, the rest of your acreage is taxable, unless you can prove that you need the entire estate for the benefit of, or the entire acreage rather, for the benefit of the principal dwelling. So that's a real subjective and tricky question for those of you that have property that are larger than 1.2 acres. All right, so let's get into this. I've already stated, most estates will make a charitable gift. Taxation is a choice depending on the decisions you make. A non-decision, keep in mind, is actually a decision. You need to take this seriously, that you can't just go home and go, this is a flood of information, I don't get it. I'm going to do squat with it. I had a conversation with a guy last week who I know has sizable assets, and he said, Tim, on my best day, this is my worst subject, I'm just not going to deal with it. It's a friend of mine. He doesn't live in Three Hills, so don't worry about that. You won't know his identity. And he's the kind of guy who I would have thought, this guy wants to work, be a good steward. I know this. But sometimes things can get overwhelming. And you just go, I don't want to just, You're actually making a non-decision, which is really a decision to, in all likelihood, pay tax. Now, I'm hoping that between now and December 31, this friend of mine is going to have a change of mind, because I'd love to help him. Ironically, he's 71. He's at the perfect age. And he knows it. Anyway, that's a little side story. There, most Canadians, we've talked about this. Either, and again, we've talked about this, a sizable portion will go to Ottawa or a charity that you value. I introduced, for my last workshop, I introduced a whole new page, which I want to talk about. If you were in church on Sunday, you saw the promo video, you might recall that I referenced a family, an elderly couple who wanted to name their children as co-owners of the property. This is a tactic with extreme, and I mean extreme, risk. And I illustrated it in the video, but it's a much deeper well than what I talked about. The results can be catastrophic. And I'm going to show you what that actually looks like. But the pitfalls of co-ownership, and I put this into the workshop because I've heard enough people say, "Oh, my kids are joint owners of my checking account," or whatever it might be. I've heard enough of that to raise a red flag and say this is an issue that really needs to be addressed. It's very dangerous. What if, as I mentioned in the video, what if your child divorces, as did happen in the scenario I gave in the video? What happens if your blood child dies and they're married? Well, their estate probably will go to their spouse, who will probably remarry. That means part of your estate, if they're co-owners, are now owned by some other family. Interesting. If there are any lawsuits related to you or them, your estate becomes liable for that. What about division in the family? I'm not aware of one family on the planet that works in perfect harmony. It's just, we are human. It doesn't exist. Division in the family is a big, big deal. And the only way co-ownership works is, I think there's two criteria. One is if you have no capital gains taxes, or your estate owes no taxes, and that's coupled with a perfect family who doesn't disagree. I don't think there's a family, like I said, on earth that fits that category. So this, I'm trying to emphasize to you, co-ownership is, so risky. So let me move to the illustration. So I'm going to take the assets. You don't know the people concerned. So I went back to their file, and what would it actually look like? We were talking about land that had been in the family for 70 years. And the value of that land had appreciated to $2.3 million. Now keep in mind, 70 years, the tremendous appreciation. Now, they were renting out their land, they weren't farming it, so they could not claim the capital gains exemption of $1 million. They had to pay the taxes on the disposition of the property. So if they co-owned with their child, just pick a child, first of all, it's not on this. They actually are just deferring the taxes. They're bequeathing, literally, the taxes to their child. Sweet gift. But beyond that, tax on their passing in this particular case would be $522,000. Now, if one of the co-owner child predeceased them, which is possible, that means that person's share would go to their spouse. All of a sudden, they own half of their land. Terrible. And if that person remarries, even more disastrous, because it now moves into another family. Or, as did happen in this particular case, if the child divorced, then $544,000 of it, about 25% or so, would go back, or would go to the divorced child's spouse. Think of it. Think of the family dynamics there. Talk about a cocktail for a fight. Furthermore, the couple would then have to find $500,000 to buy back their own land if they wanted to keep it in the family. I'm just trying to illustrate the gravity of this move. It's not a move. Just please don't do it. Okay. So let's move on to, whoops, what happened? I lost my slide. Possible estate goals. All right, let's just back up for a bit. Goals for your estate are essential as they will determine possible treatment. The decisions that will influence the decisions you make. So we're going to look at some goals and then possible treatment of that. These are all scenarios that I've worked with, so I'm not fabricating stuff in my head here. What is a possible goal? I'm not sure why whoops. Let's go back here. Sorry about this, folks. All right. In some cases, some people simply want to unload. It's part of their estate plan. They simply want to unload an asset that they don't want. And I'm going to illustrate this with a cottage. There was a single lady, came across, again, this is going back to the late 90s. She had this, she was single, elderly, couldn't take care of it. She was an American, the cottage was in Canada. She just needed to unload the asset. It was advantageous to her to do that. So that could be a goal. You want to unload an asset. Or a goal might be you want to gift an asset. Why? Because by gifting it, you're actually benefiting the health of the estate. And I had such a situation about 5 years ago where somebody gave us a gift in kind to an apartment complex because it's part of their bigger estate picture. This would be advantageous to have that tax benefit. So that could be a goal that you have for your estate. Here's another one. Assisting a loved one who is legally incapable of making decisions, the power of attorney. I had a family come to me a number of years ago. One of their siblings was having difficulty mentally, and they wanted to take care of it. They didn't know what to do. So part of the estate goal, they were asking me questions. What can we do to maximize this estate, given the estate owner's interests? And so we worked out a plan for that. So that could be a goal. Some folks, particularly as you age, you just simply want to downsize your estate. And it could involve taxation depending on what assets you're eliminating. This is a big deal, especially for farmers, and a very, 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 very complex one, is the transfer of assets to heirs without unwanted taxes. What do you do with that? And I'll talk about a technique you can think about to help ease the pain on that one. And then philanthropy. One of your estate goals may just simply be, God has given me this, I'm the steward of it. You want to use your estate to intentionally bless a charity while you're alive as well as on your passing. So there's multiple goals that you can have. It's not just restricted to one, of course, but you need to have a goal. You need to figure out, in the long term, what do we want to accomplish? And then you start working backwards to say, well, how do we make that happen? So let's take a look at this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this cottage that I referred to as an example, and how we can treat this asset different ways to deal with the capital gain. So here is the actual cottage. I went and visited it to see if we actually wanted the cottage on a pristine lake in Kamloops, and frankly, if I had the money at the time, I would have bought the sucker. It was a sweet deal. However, this lady wanted to give this, so I'm just going to use it as a model. here's a cottage if you did this, 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 and this. Okay? Does that kind of make sense? I hope so. So the first action could be gift the asset as a gift in kind, which is what she did. She no longer needed it, and she wanted us to have the benefit of it, either for our own use or to just sell and whatnot. So she transferred the ownership. We sold it. We issued her a tax receipt. She paid no taxes on that. And it was a great blessing to Prairie at the time. Or you could simply sell the asset and gift a portion of the sale to the charity of your choice to offset those taxes owed. Simple buy or sell rather and gift. Or you could use insurance to eliminate the capital gains taxes and seamlessly transfer the property to the heirs. This is a great technique, and we're going to dive a little deeper into that in a bit. This one is not as good of a choice, in my opinion, but it's a choice. You can convert the asset into an income-producing tool, such as a gift annuity. So it is possible, if you have some piece of property that you deem would be better if you could actually gift or use the asset value of the asset to convert it into a gift annuity. It would certainly generate income. It wouldn't, in all likelihood, eliminate all the taxes owed, but that's dependent on each and every specific situation. So there's 4 possible ways to treat one asset. What are the benefits? For the donor, it either reduces or eliminates taxes now or in the estate later on. It provides for an easier transfer of the asset ownership from one generation to the next. And it can, if you want, to generate income from the asset. I realize I'm moving along here quickly, but we've got a little less than 15 minutes to go. All right, so let's move to life insurance. I've entitled this one Superstitions. A little story before I jump into this. About 2.5 years ago, I was doing a workshop in the Fraser Valley, and there's a gentleman there who is married to a Filipino. And in the Filipino culture, evidently, if you have life insurance, you will die. They think if you buy a policy, you will die, which is, of course, is nonsense. And they'd had this policy. This couple had been married for probably 30 years by then and hadn't died. But the husband was quick wanting to unload this because his wife was egging him on. Get rid of the life insurance policy, whatever. So that's why I've called it superstition. Some people actually have that same mentality when it comes to creating a will. They have this awkward way of thinking that if you create a will, you're going to die. Well, I've had a will for probably 35 years, and I'm not a ghost. I'm still here. I know you all get it. But I'm just giving you a little insight into some of the thinking that's out there. So whatever your thinking is, here are some thoughts. Regardless of motive, life insurance can benefit you now and on your passing. Somebody in the industry told me that 80%, this galled me. Think of this, 80% of policies are never realized. Who wins? The life insurance company. So it behooves us to take advantage of this tool if you have life insurance. Managing life insurance well combines 4 important ideals. One, in my opinion, is the easy wealth transfer to heirs. It can provide current tax relief, estate tax relief, or philanthropy, giving to charity of your choice. And it also gives folks the opportunity to give far beyond their usual capacity to give. Okay, so let's take a look at some particulars on life insurance. There's a couple ways that you can manage this. First is name the insurance policy with Prairie or a charity as the beneficiary. So it's your policy, but they're named as a beneficiary. What's the benefit for you, the donor? Is that the estate receives a tax receipt to help offset estate taxes owed. And of course, this is particularly beneficial for those with large capital gains taxes. And of course, then it also provides you're given a substantial gift at some point to the charity of your choice. For Prairie or a charity, as the owner of the policy, the benefit to the donor is that you get a tax receipt for each premium you pay. So I had some lady in the Hamilton, Ontario area. She has since gone on to be with Jesus, but this is the kind of policy that she had. That Prairie was named as a beneficiary, or as the owner rather, of her policy, and every time she paid a premium, we would then issue her a tax receipt. So the question really is, do I need estate tax relief, or do I need immediate tax relief? And that kind of helps determine if you name Prairie or a charity as the beneficiary or the owner of that. And then again, likewise, it gives potential to give a gift far above capacity. All right, now I want you to think back to the story I told you about the gentleman in the Vancouver area who had his estate was worth $1.5 million. He wanted to give $500,000 to one daughter, $500,000 to another daughter, and $500,000 to charity. All right, I'm going to use that illustration as a model to see if he had gifted it or used life insurance, what would have happened. So this graph here attempts to illustrate that. So in his particular case, he did nothing, and he wound up paying $106,000 or so in tax. However, if he had chosen to do what he intended to do, which was to gift the property, which was worth $500,000, he still would have owed taxes, but because he gifted it, he would have gotten a $250,000 tax credit, which would have wiped out all of his taxes and given him tax credit for other taxes he may have owed. And then in our case, Prairie would have been the beneficiary to $500,000. That's if he chose to give the asset. All right, if he had chosen to say, no, I want to transfer this asset to my daughters, but I don't want them to have to pay the tax. This is where life insurance can work. So you still owe the same amount of tax, $105,700. So you want to generate a policy that is going to issue a credit that will wipe that out. In this case, he would need to purchase a policy no less than $211,000, which would generate the necessary tax credit to wipe that out. So you could seamlessly pass that across to his daughters. Charity gets a very handsome gift and no taxes are paid. And I know the question that's probably floating around in your head right now, it's a legit question, is if you don't have a life insurance policy, you have to buy one. And elderly people buying a life insurance policy is retardedly expensive. And you're right, but I have an answer. And we will get there. All right, let's move on to a gift in kind. We already talked to some degree on this, gifts that are really kind. And I say that because sometimes, sadly, some people have junk, and they want to unload the junk and get a fat tax receipt for it. I had a situation, this probably goes back 25 years ago, where somebody had some unwanted junk, and at that time, I was his go-to person, and I very foolishly accepted the gift. It did Prairie no good, and he got an obscenely high tax donation receipt, which there was everything about that transaction was wrong. So that's why I use the term gifts that really are kind. So there's some key factors in determining if this is best for the health of the estate. So if you're actually thinking of this, you need to involve family relationships in the discussion. I alluded to that earlier. Taxes, of course, are part of the equation. What are your philanthropic goals and the type of asset? Now, one thing I want to feature here is and I've heard this many times, is some look at their big estate and they go, if I pass this all off to my kids, I'm going to ruin them because it's just too much money. And so that's why people say, I want to give X amount to my kids and ensure that X amount goes here, 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 and here. One of their motivations is they don't want to ruin their kids. But that said, you still need to involve your kids in the discussion so there are no surprises. I know of a situation where there was a surprise, and today there is a divided family. 4 siblings, 2 on this side, 2 on that side. All divided because of choices made in a particular estate. You don't want to do that. It's hard enough, frankly, to keep family unity at the best of times. Maybe I've got a weird family. I don't know. The type of people that need to be involved in a gift in kind are the donor, the person giving the gift, the donee, the person receiving, or the entity receiving the gift, the donor's family. You want to involve the donor's accountant, the donor's lawyer, and I've underlined a qualified third-party appraiser. Anytime you do a gift in kind, you have to get a third-party appraiser, but you have to make sure that that person is qualified. I ran into a situation where it actually involved 2 appraisers, and I don't think either one were qualified. The spread was the first appraiser appraised the goods at $1,400, $1,400. The donor wasn't satisfied with that. So the donor went and found another third party who I don't think was equally as qualified and said, oh, this stuff is worth $47,000. How do you go from 14 to $47,000? Canada Revenue will climb all over you if you go offside on this issue. It's super important to ensure that if you do a gift in kind, that you involve a qualified third-party appraiser. The donor and donee must follow rigid CRA rules to stay on side. And let me speak from a charity's point of view. If we don't, we run a very, very, very high risk of putting our status, our charitable status, at risk. So we have to ensure that rigid rules are followed. All that said and done, it is a way to seamlessly deal with the state taxes now as well as on your passing. All right, let's talk about stocks and mutual funds. I call this the TIFSA of philanthropy. TIFSA meaning tax-free savings account. So you can throw lots of money into your tax-free savings account. It's a good thing. I just call this the TIFSA of philanthropy. We'll get into that. So you can either give or you can even bequest, put in your will, bequest shares. So there'll be no taxes on gains. If you're giving stock, it eliminates all the capital gains associated with that stock. Then you can apply the credit to other potential taxes on the estate. So it's actually a pretty smart move if you have stock to gift X amount of that stock to a charity. You get a double benefit in that it eliminates the initial taxes on the stock, and then take that same tax credit, apply it to other taxes on your estate. Really good move. We were the beneficiary of a gift of that 2 years ago. This also ensures that there's cash available in the estate to make the gift. If you have designated X amount of your estate to go to charity, you also need to ensure that there's cash in the estate on your passing to make that possible. Otherwise, your heirs will have to sell assets to actually make the gift. So if you do a bequest to a charity, you have to ensure that you have the capability, your estate has the capability of actually making that gift without selling assets, because that could become really problematic for the heirs. Okay, let's move on. How you deal with shares or mutual funds on sale or in an estate will produce radically different outcomes. So let's compare 3 ways. I'm going to show you that in a bit. It's surprisingly easy to get the best result. The action is gift publicly listed securities now or in your will. The benefit is that it will eliminate your capital gains by 100%. Gone. You'll receive a tax receipt for the full value of the securities at the time they are deposited into the account of the charity. And the charity, of course, gets the benefit of the value of the shares. All right, so what does this look like? So I'm building this, I'm past time. Assume shares with the fair market value of 50,000, capital gains of 20. I'm going to quickly whip through this. If you were just to cash the shares, the tax payable is 10, the tax on that is 3, you get 0 tax credit, still have to pay the tax. There's no credit, no gift, no credit, no gift to priority, whatever. If you cash the stock and then gift it, you still owe the 10,000. The tax on the gain is still the same, but now you get a $25,000 tax credit. The tax payable is 0. The net tax, because you have to reduce the tax, the taxes is, the net credit is $21,900, but the gift remains the same. However, if you just gift the stocks, there's no tax. On that, you get the tax credit of $25,000. Tax payable is 0. Your net credit to you is $25,000, and the charity receives the same amount. All right, we're very near the end. Words have meaning, and I don't want to be crude with this, but it really gets the point across. So now I'm talking about your will, you're writing your will. You have to be careful in creating a will to express exactly what you want in legal terms. So I'm not a fan of will kits. Those of you here in person have a printed will guide. If you want that electronically, just email me and I can send one to you. Those of you online, if you want a will guide, just email me. I will happily send you a will guide. It is only a guide. It's literally a fill-in-the-blank thing. Then you take that to a lawyer to get that put in legal language. That is critical. We have a disclaimer at the bottom that says, this is not a will, this is just a guide. But we want to help you to know what are the decisions you need to make. Many people don't know what decisions they need to make. So again, I don't want to be crude with this this picture, but it really helps get the point across. So I came across this in 2007 in a McDonald's in Australia. So let's blame the Aussies on this one. In the washroom, in the men's washroom, there was this sign: please use soap in disabled toilet. Besides, that'd just be gross. You could easily interpret that to mean this: find a broken toilet and wash your hands using the soap you find in it. Huh? That's what that says, right? Words have meaning. You have to be very, very careful about the words you use. What they meant to say was, you will find soap in the washroom reserved for people with disabilities. That's actually what it meant. So I use it again as an illustration, just to just to get the point across. It is worth it to pay the money, and generally speaking, right now, a package for will, power of attorney, and personal directive, they just come as a package, is about $800, depending on the lawyer. It's worth every dollar, because if you don't, and I know another situation where because of poorly worded stuff, you're just, the lawyer fees are just ticking. And it'll eat away at your estate like you wouldn't believe. In this particular state I'm thinking of, with that dynamic, poorly worded, and a bad choice, an ill-informed choice, the heirs got 20%. 20% of what they should have got. So this is important. All right, the big bequest. Is this the end of the story? What's the action here? Include a charity in your estate disbursement. The benefit to you, the donor, is the estate receives a tax receipt, which will help to minimize or eliminate taxes on your estate. You can claim 100% of your tax credit in the year of your death and prior. Before that, if you give, it's only 75% of your income. And of course, it becomes a never-ending legacy. For Prairie or a charity, they simply become the recipient of a larger gift. All right, I've thrown a lot at you. What do we do with this? Where do we go? What's the starting point? I referred to this earlier. Whatever you do, you need to vet with the associated professional, a lawyer, an accountant, and so forth, who will not benefit from your estate today or tomorrow. A third-party person. And I say that because I've had experience with some banks who literally have interfered with their clients' choices and convinced them to go another route. Why? Because it would benefit the bank, not the client. The ethics in that are just disgusting. So what you need to do is take a look at your situation, review your options. If you'd like some coaching on this, a personal consultation. Now, I do have a follow-up card there, and I'm going to talk about that in a bit, so just forget that for a moment. And my goal is to try to help you find answers to your questions. I don't guarantee answers, but I can try to guide you in some respect. And my hope would be to help you develop a custom solution that works for you. With whatever plan you come up with on your own or with working with somebody else or whoever, you still need to review it with a professional just to make sure that from an accounting point of view, from a legal point of view, all is copacetic. And again, ensure someone who does not have a personal vested interest in the outcome. And don't wait. It could be too late. I've referenced two stories today where by waiting it could have been too late for both parties. The one party actually had done due diligence, all was good. The other party, that lady that had all the papers on her desk, I highly doubt she plowed through all that in her remaining 6 weeks. And I'm guessing, I don't know this, I'm guessing that she passed. without her estate being intact. And I don't even want to think about the nightmare of that. Okay, I've gone over time, but I do want to take questions. So if you have questions that you think all could benefit from, fire away, and I'll try to answer. I don't guarantee an answer. Well, any questions? Okay, no, I can't possibly have explained everything that well. But if there aren't, we're going to call it a day, and we'll keep ourselves on time. For those of you here present, there's a follow-up card. Now, what I would prefer is for you to not fill out this card. This is kind of outdated. My bad. What I would prefer is if you would just write your name and your email address. That's all. Write your name and your email address, put it on the seat. I'll collect them afterwards because I want to send you a post-workshop survey. I want to get your thoughts on, was this helpful, was it not helpful, what was helpful, was it a good thing, was it a bad thing, whatever. Much more information than what this card is asking for. So just put your name on there, your email address, and look for a message in your inbox in the next couple days. We'd like to get that survey to you. For those of you online, if you could email me, so my address is tim.mackenzie@prairie.edu. Just email me, give me your name, of course, and I will ship that survey off to you. And if you want to follow up, I'd be delighted to begin a conversation and see where that might go. So thank you, folks, for joining us here. I hope something has resonated with you. I hope it's been worth the hour and a half. And wait for that email, and then you can respond back to me if you would like to have a further conversation. I'm more than game to do that. Alrighty, thank you. I want to honor your time. Let me just close with prayer, and then let's call it good. Father, we live in a land of such abundance, and we thank you. We thank you that you have entrusted us with whatever you have given to us, little or a lot. Doesn't matter. Help us to be wise, good stewards of that which you have given to us. And I pray that you would give all who hear these words insight, wisdom, understanding as to whatever their best next step should be. So I commit them to you, and thank you for this opportunity in Jesus' name. Amen.